Morning, everybody. Buenos dias, bom dia. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for Malas and TCD for organizing this Tropilunch. I'm really happy to be here. For today, I'm going to share this presentation on Amazon indigenous food systems, as well as the impact of socio-ecological changes and resilience strategies among indigenous communities in the Venezuelan Amazon. I'm going to divide this presentation in 3 stages. I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal academic pathway. Later, I'm going to present like very general framework on the Amazon, but the idea to explain this general framework is that later just to anchor in my case study, and then I'll go further on my case study in the Venezuelan Amazon. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about my personal academic pathway, because I think it is also important for students to see how researchers evolve over the years. Even though that when I started working with the Yanomami, and I have been working almost for 3 decades among the indigenous peoples in the Upper Orinoco, I have been doing several research. I have been participating in different project. I have done more ethnographic, sometimes more applied, sometimes more engaged because it was necessary, and sometimes more participatory and community-based projects that have been related to these different, I would say, like a research theme that have been constantly in an interplay. And it was also said interplay because it's the relationship between the indigenous peoples and the nation state and the national institutions, and how is this relation between specifically the Yanomami and what we call, or they call us, like the Nape or Nape Cup. So all of us are Nape. So this relationship has been always in my research and have been guiding me. So now I'm working on not a new necessarily topic, but like I'm going deeper into the anthropology of food related to the illegal gold mining expansion. So the Amazon. I know that everybody here works in the Amazon, and I'm not going to go, each of these. But what I wanted to highlight here is about 2 major things. First is the biodiversity of the Amazon that have been widely described in many fields, but also the diversity regarding people, culturally, ethnically, socially. So when we talk, and there have been a lot on the impact, the socioeconomic and ecological impact, trying to describe the major drivers that affect the Amazon as a whole, we have been considering a major issue that is related to the environmental degradation, which, according to scientific panels and the United Nations, is leading the Amazon to a red code, to supposedly a tipping point. And it has been a major issue. But what I wanted to highlight here, because I know that all of you pretty much are familiar with this, is that this environmental degradation is a consequence of a historical colonization of the area. An historical colonization with a lot of interest, with a lot of power relationship that has been placed in the area. And that has led to continuous struggles over land and resources, leading to human rights violations, therefore to socio-environmental injustice. So this is pretty much just to have, again, an idea, because I'm just going to develop a little bit of these over the talk. So now, just, a little bit of the Venezuela and the Amazon state in Venezuela is pretty much the same. There's like quite a lot biodiversities and species, and the population, of course, a lot of different indigenous people, the relevance of the Orinoco Basin in the whole Amazonia region, that is really important, because sometimes many people over the years has asked me, but is Venezuela part of the Amazon? And they say, no, maybe just a little, a piece. And there is always a major discussion. how big is the Amazonas in the country? And actually, it's not just only the Amazonas state; it's also part of the what is called the Guyana Shield. You know, so and that is because there is a connection through the Casiquiare branch to the Orinoco River and the Rio Negro that ended in the Amazon. So you know that kind of sometimes misrepresentation is good to highlight because this is the way sometimes that how Amazon had been excluded into the major discourses, at least sometimes in our country. So here are, you know, major pretty much the same impacts that I mentioned, but of course climate change. But this is one impact driver that is really important right now, that is the extractive frontier illegal gold mining, as well as the irregular armed groups and what I call a permissive state governance that I will explain a little bit later. Besides the biodiversity, there is an incredible ethnic and cultural diversity. Just only in the Amazonas state, there are more than 20 indigenous people from different linguistic families. Actually, the population is you know very low, but with an incredible cultural and ethnic diversity. And here, what I wanted to highlight is that in the frame of the nation state, indigenous people's rights have been recognized since 1999 in the Constitution. And from there are several laws that recognize their land, their language, their heritage, their economy, their politics, and so on. So it seems that in Venezuela, the indigenous right has been really protected. It's like a, you know, there seems like a possible, like living in a shell nuts, that how supposedly is protected the indigenous people's rights. Okay, so as I said, the main impact, the impact drivers that is affecting the Venezuelan Amazon is related to mining, illegal gold mining. And this, I just wanted to share with you some milestones that are important to understand why is the presence of current the mining. And that started in 1990s. That the main pressure of the illegal gold miners came from Brazil, and specifically to the Yanomami Brazilian territory. You know, there was some data that says that more than 50,000 miners that were in a certain point in the Brazilian Yanomami territory. So there was a lot of pressure that is coming from outside in terms of mining. And that's when the nation, the government decided in 1989 to make this decree that mining exploitation is prohibited in the Amazonas state. But this is just a law. Again, it's something that is there. So, but during the 90s, you know, there was certain kind of control of mining. However, occurred the terrible Hashimu massacre that was widely informed in the media, in which 16 Yanomamis were killed by gold miners at the Brazilian area. It was pretty much around here. So, you know, during the 90s, the mining was in one way or another controlled. Then there was a lot of changes, political changes in Venezuela. Arrived a new government. The Bolivarian Revolution started. Hugo Chavez started as a president. And from there, a lot of changes occur and have occurred and still occurring in the country. So one major point, it was in 2009, when all activity that was really the main sources where the government was funded started to decrease. And from that point to now, all the economic and political crises have led the country to a major critical situation that we have seen it in all Latin American countries, because the migration that Venezuelans have gone to other places for that reason. So 2015 was, a point in which decrease of oil prices, hyperinflation, food shortage, repression, corruption, migration. So that was a perfect, scenario that for the government that in 2016 decided to create this National Strategic Development Zone called Orinoco Mining Arc, Arco Minero del Orinoco. And that is this whole area that was declared for mining from the government. So even though that this part is legally, declared as a mining area, this state is still under this decree. But the whole pressure is coming everywhere. So at the first time, the mining was coming from outside. Now, from 2015, all the pressures and the mining is coming within and with the permissive governance. And that's here is the change of permissive governance. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Yanomami. The Yanomami people have been considered one of the most still isolated indigenous people that continue practices, their customs, their beliefs, their rituals, their ways of life. They occupy a huge area in Venezuela and in Brazil. The population is more than 30,000. They live in small and scattered villages. And I'm just going to talk about Venezuela because Brazil is other scenario. They continue, of course, practicing slash and burn horticulture. And here, what is interesting about the Yanomami is that unlike other indigenous populations in the Amazon, the main crop is the variety of plantains. And that is something interesting because we think that all the indigenous peoples in the Amazon, the main crop is manioc, and for the Yanomami, it's not. It's plantains. Of course, they also have manioc, tubers, other. And again, playing a little bit with this political economy situation. By 1991, this area was decreed as a national park and a biosphere reserve. Okay. So when the Fulbright made the call about scholars to participate in this very interesting and interdisciplinary program, I put together my research project. But this research project was based actually when from conversations with different leaders in 2020 when I was doing another project with this team, because I also belong to the Yanomami Foundation, that is an NGO, and we were just given some mosquito nets, and we were doing, more health activities, and also carry on a research on microbiome. So after that, I started talking with them, and they were really concerned about the mining. Actually, over all these years, almost 30 years going to the Upper Orinoco, this time was when they really start talking all the time about the mining and the impact on their food resources, but also in their livelihoods and the idea of fairness. And that, for me, really struck me because it was probably the first time that I really heard that they were feeling like fears to the others. So, well, I came up with this research question for the Fulbright project: how indigenous communities respond, questions, and cope with the expansion of illegal gold mining and socio-environmental changes while trying to maintain their daily and symbolic practices of food waste and security. And here I prefer to use food waste, or later indigenous food systems and security, and not just food security, because food security sometimes is too limited. It's just like, the fact that, I have the food, I just eat, I'm full, and that's it. And for indigenous people, that goes beyond what is food security. It's really more complex. And that's why I, been here, and I've been taking the time to think about, a conceptual approach on how to address Amazonian indigenous food systems as indigenous knowledge, practices, belief, and techniques related to the production, distribution, and consumption of food culturally considered nutritious and valued. So in order to address this, and this is, like a combination of different literature that I have getting from Colombia, which they are really focused on trying to understand the food system, and other literature, I just feel that in order to, and also, of course, the anthropology of nutrition, there is, obviously a connection to the biocultural perspective in which this system is linked to the Amazonian socio-ecological system, which is holistic, which is dynamic, that it goes beyond the anthropocentric perspective, is more pluri and biocentric, but also it's very linked to the ethics of subsistence and sustainability. Meaning that this is related to the dynamics, the territorial dynamics that indigenous population has, and is completely socially constructed. That is, which are the exchange relationship that they build, the reciprocity, commonality, political relationship, cosmology, restrictions. And also it's very important for me to understand from their point of view, the notions of well-being, because we have our notion of well-being. Each group has their own notion. I mean, it's really cultural, the notion of well-being. And that's very interesting in terms of these discussions on socio-ecological systems. What is the definition of their well-being for them? Okay, so I said that the main pressure in this area, in the Amazonas, in Venezuela, is illegal gold mining, which are, polluting the river with mercury. But there are other, pressures like institutional food policies that are related to food and other potential threats. I'm referring to the mobilization of these armed forces that sometimes show up and sometimes disappear. So how these affect the Yanomami food system? In order to do that, I follow what is some concepts of cultural resilience, and how individuals are capable of adapting positively to adverse circumstances or context. So in this case, it's the indigenous strategies to adapt and co-opt with these factors that threaten their food systems. So in order to address this, I think, and following the major conceptual scheme, that there are four topics that I believe are very important. One, territorial management, then conjunctural actions to imminent changes, symbolic practices to reduce risk, and the whole social and collective agency. So I'm going to explain a little bit each of them. In terms of territorial level, I'm going to address the Yanomami perceptions of socio-environmental impacts on their territory. The main question here is how has the territory, forest, or urihi means selva, forest, land, non-human beings, it's had been transformed and also affect their food system. So the issues that I'm interested to understand here is, the notions of forest, water, soils, access to resources, of course, the idea of drought and flow and floods. So therefore, the relationship between forest, food, and well-being here is going to be a major, a key issue to be addressed. As a, for that collection, I'm just going to do focus group. I'm just also going to get together in meetings. And one thing that is very interesting, and I have seen it in other experiences, especially in Colombia, is the development of the socio-ecological calendars. And that is something that had been, in different groups developing. So the idea of just to compare the current socio-ecological calendar to probably to previous one, from there we can see the transformations and probably the resilience strategies. Okay, the second level is the livelihood level. So local actions and adaptations to the impact of mining on food security. And in this case now, I'm just talking about food security because it's more immediate. It's something that it's what they need to meet their food needs. So the question here is what resilience strategies do the Yanomami carry out to meet their food needs in the face of current changes? So of course here, the idea is to address questions of food production, distribution, consumption at individual, family, and community levels. So for this part, a household survey in the Babaca communities, that is mainly the area where I have been working, is really going to be a really interesting tool. Semi-structured interviews, of course, participant observation, and in the Conuco areas. Conucos is what other places call chagras, and the whole activities that they perform in terms of livelihood. In the next one, I just wanted to share, this was an experience in 2020. We were in this project on microbiology, and well, we were having a canoe, we have an outboard motor, and we had gas. Right now, these three things are very, very difficult to find it there. There's no gas. Very ironic for a country that used to produce a lot of oil. So in this case, or at that time, we just give to a few of the hunters, and we were with three guys that were really good hunters, and they went up the river, and the next day they arrived with a tapir, they arrived with a paca and these little gators and a lot of food. But what I wanted to highlight here is the importance of the collective forces that they provide in order not just to hunt. I mean, hunt is a major thing, but is when they just get the game and then start to cleaning, cutting, distribute the different parts. So again, what I just wanted to highlight here is how important it is to have this notion of collectiveness in terms of food productions and access for the Yanomami. I mean, for that time, there was, wow, that was like a feast with all this food at that time, and we enjoyed very much all that food. Okay, so the third level, the symbolic. It's also interesting for me to know this more symbolic level. And here I'm calling like indigenous cosmo-gastropolitics interpretations. It sounds very like, it is not. It's really a combination of cosmopolitics, that is a term that it was very well used by Marisol de la Cadena, and also gastropolitics, that is a term that was used by Arjun Appadurai at the beginning of the 80s. So, but with the combination of these two, what I just wanted to address is how the shamans and the leaders make sense of the question of food waste, shortage, and mining from that symbolic level. I mean, which are the forces that are combined for them, for these shamans? Because there is the factical interpretation, but there is this always for the Yanomami, this symbolic, cosmological interpretation. So of course here there are aspects like, the origins of crops and animals, I mean, the myth, but also when, these ideas of abundance or shortage, of hunger, how do they resolve these limitations in this symbolic level? So here, of course, I'm planning to participate in shamanic gatherings when they take the hallucinogenic drugs, midnight discourses, and interview with elders. I have to say that this is probably the most difficult part to access data because, I mean, it's not like, you arrive and they're starting like talking about this. It's something like takes time. But I know that they have been doing this kind of discussion when they were taking the yopo, the EPENA, doing the EPENA mode. Okay, at the social level, the collective agency, of course, here is what kind of collective actions did they develop to overcome food security? But it's not just only within, but it's also the collective actions that they perform with the state institutions. It's like how they negotiate the state institution regarding the food, and especially with social programs that, like the Bolsas Club, is a food bag. And I know that in Brazil there is also the Bolsa Familiar that they just give. But there have been a lot of, political tensions, exchange, how to get these bolsas club when are in this moment of shortage. Okay, some initial findings. Well, I was talking about resilience strategies, and thank you, Bob, because he gave me a lot of literature regarding resilience and the assessment tool, like the tool. In this case, I'm trying to take the big picture of the concept. And there have been, of course, before all this mining and the impact mining in Venezuela. And again, I have to say in Venezuela, in Brazil have been dealing with that for almost 30 years. But what they do when they feel in a pressure time, they practice the Wayumi. Wayumi is when the Yanomami leave the communities for a while, sometimes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months. They go into the jungle to get some forest food. They also do the Wayumi in order to reduce internal conflicts or to even get away from disease. So this is a way, to leave the community, build little shelters where they go and then can travel for over even 3 months. And they settle in close to a shore or and then start like having sometimes like even feast with food. The other, so here, okay, are the Yanomami communities continue doing Wayumi with the pressure of the miners? This is a good question. It's like, is the Wayumi a strategic action in which they are trying to cope with the pressure of the miners? Another action that I have seen lately is that the conucos, the gardens, the chakras, some communities are trying to increase the activity of the chakras and of the conucos. And that is very interesting because there was a point when the bolsas, the food in this bolsas club, they were like, sending the delivery to that area. The conucos start to reduce because they were depending on the bolsas club. But now, because everything that is going on in the country and with the miners, etc., there are some communities that start to increase in the activity of their conucos. Okay. So other collective actions are communal dialogue. As I said, now they're even increasingly aware of what is going to be the impact, and also because they have heard what was going on in Brazil. I mean, that's not something new for them, but now they feel and see it that is really getting close to these communities. So this is a way in which they're discussing these themes about mining. They're also trying to make a formal complaints to the Defensoría del Pueblo in Amazonas. And I have this picture here that was sent to me a couple of weeks ago by a Yanomami who went really upriver. And the Yanomami upriver were saying that the color of the water, it was not safe. It was dirty. It was very, very worry for them. And, it's with a cellular phone, he took the photo and he said, Hortensia is really dirty. I mean, they cannot be there. So, the fact that they're doing this kind of action from a collective point of view, it's really interesting because they are trying to struggle with something in different ways. And of course, they are trying to articulate with other indigenous organizations, more in Puerto Ayacucho, the big Orpia and other indigenous organizations that are dealing pretty much the same. Okay, some final remarks. Again, remember that this is a project that is in an ongoing process. I still have to do more field research. But one thing that definitely we can say is that illegal gold mining as a resource plundering activity has unstrained and harmful impacts on relatively isolated indigenous people such as the Yanomami. I mean, this is not questionable. I mean, we cannot just continue like relatively this. It is a fact. Also, that even though institutional aid policies are trying to help the indigenous people through these bolsas club, they have been changing their diet, definitely, but also have created dependency with this government policy. And that's also an interesting process that we have to be, keep an eye on that. And the third one that is more, a practical issue is that forest care strategies start being an issue in their reflections, is how to take care of the forest. That was a question that I never heard before, because for the Yanomami, the forest, it was so big that it was endless. And I remember, previous conversations and, no, don't worry, forest is never going to be end, it's huge. There was like this idea of abundance and vastity, but now they start like, what to do. To address these questions that they have or concern, the Intercultural and Bilingual School are having, little discussions with the maestros, with the kids, in order to, start to strengthen visions of the forest care, but also to alert on the dangers of being part of mining activity. And here, this is very important because many of the indigenous people, not just only the Yanomami, but in the whole Amazonas territory, even though they complain about the impact of mining, they participate in this activity because they need it, because they need to get access. And because, again, we are living in a country in which it has been in crisis for almost 10 years. So, the salaries are very low. There is no way to get sources. So how do they cope with? So they just, go back and forth to these mining posts to get some resources. So this is an issue that is really important to address, and hopefully through the school we can just find a way to go to the students and have these conversations in a deeply way. Okay, here, I just want to finish this with two quotes. One is from a fellow colleague, Marcus Colchester. He is the director of a Forest People program. He worked in Venezuela many years ago. He worked with the Sanima people, that is a Yanomami subgroup. And he has done very interesting ecological research among the Yanomami. So in 2004, he stated that the Yanomami experience teaches many lessons, and he was mainly talking about Brazil. We know now, beyond any doubt, that enforced contact with isolated indigenous groups in Amazonia is bound to lead to massive loss of life. And that is strong. That is, It's really, really a very strong sentence. And here I have this quote from a Yanomami leader last year who told me, we are very worried. If the pollution from the miners is already in the headwaters, meaning the headwater of the Orinoco River, the water and fish are sick, and we are all going to get sick too. What are we going to do? We are worried about our kids and family. So with these two quotes, what I just wanted to connect and to link to one of my previous slides on the Amazon, when I said that it's not just a matter of degradation and deforestation of the Amazon, is that this is an issue that we have to be addressed as a social and environmental justice. Because if we are on this level in which we are really concerned of massive loss of life, it's like we're not just losing, a community. It's like we are losing culture, linguistic languages, ways of thinking, cosmology, and that is actually the base of sustainability for the Amazon. Thank you.